Hi, guys. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we are living up to the promise. I asked a question to the community about how out of touch parents are. Old folks, I said at the time. It's quite possible that many of you agree or disagree, but no one but the person that we have today answered the call and took me on with this challenge. And so we're going to have what I term a debate, for or against the subject matter. And without further ado, I'm going to invite Ed to the broadcast. You can definitely hear me because we're in the same room. Ed, say hello to the community.
Hi guys. I'm Pastor Law's son. I'm excited for what we're going to do today. Happy to offer my perspective.
And a perspective it is, because officially I'm guessing that you are in that category of millennials, which fits the bill because I'm having this debate with people who are definitely younger. I don't want a situation where, actually saying that, I've also behind the scenes welcomed or invited others who may disagree with me or agree with me, but they're on the other side. That's the old folk, the ones I call old age pensioners. And so, like I mentioned in the video, I did say that I would be allowed to choose the unfair advantage I mentioned, to choose the topic or at least the area of focus. And I think looking at culture may be a good start. And then maybe someone else some other day would come and deal with other areas like tech, relationships, and trends. But today we'll look at culture. And so I suppose just to give perspective on what I mean by culture, I'm speaking about culture in the sense, what do you have around you? What influence does the society and what society has on you? Your upbringing, where you in a community where parents were flaunting their abilities, their strengths, their weaknesses in front of each other. Did you build your relationship with the current friends you have in that dynamic? Were you always with Christians only, or were you with a very broad spectrum of individuals? I can speak to my upbringing. I grew up in a family setup, and of course the family that I refer to is an extended family setup where you're learning from each other. So you have this family, that family, and all the other families living in different rooms. That was my upbringing in a very large communal home. And so you basically grow up in front of each other, and you're learning from kids your age. And obviously you learn as best as you can from parents how they nurture their own children or not. And of course, the games that we were exposed to are nothing resembling what the young folk of the 21st century are exposed to. And so we made our fun. We grew up and became quite independent early on. And we were strengthened by that. Parents were not as hands-on. Believe me, they were not as hands-on as many of you think. They had to work. And so when they went out to work, we had to be catered for. And so you either cater for yourself, or your elder brother or elder sister did that. And or you may have a house help, something that I know happens in the 21st century also. But altogether, parents were having to do what they needed to do, and they were, delivering on that front, whilst we just had to conform and abide with rules that were quite firm. And then just quickly, I'll touch on the rules and then I'll give way. The rules were very clear. It was a simple no or yes. There was no middle ground. And that's because the parent, through experience, knew exactly what needed to be done. And over time, it was proven to work and, be true. So why change it? Why tweak it? There was no negotiation. It was either yes, you do it, no, you don't, and then you face the consequences. And there were consequences for both. If you did well, or you stayed true to the instruction, you got rewarded. And if you misbehaved, you got I'm on the public domain, so you just get what comes to you, So it never killed any of us. In fact, we applauded, I still do, our late parents for the patience, the discipline to see it through, because they could have gone weak and had us turn out differently. But ultimately, I really appreciate what my folks did for me in the area of discipline, and I did say I was just going to give way, but and we're a Christian family, but I can't say that I had any relationship with God in the way I do now. And he didn't inform everything I did. But in retrospect, Proverbs 22:6 tells us, train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he's old, he will not depart from it. And that verse emphasizes the importance of guiding and teaching children in a way that aligns with, their unique characteristics and needs. So my dad or mom, unknown to them, were living out scripture in our lives. And so I can't say my parents were out of touch then. And certainly, I can't speak for myself. My son, who is thankfully here, would also comment on that. I will now give way and allow you, Ed, to go for it. Okay?
Yeah. So I think from my perspective, when you grow up in a country that's different to the country that your parents have grown up in, that plays a massive part on how you take to the culture, if that makes sense. I think a lot of the time growing up, something that I remember thinking or feeling is that my parents' culture was so different to the culture that I had in front of me, that I was exposed to, whether it be through school, whether it be through, your local neighborhood. It was definitely a sticking point, something that I personally found difficult, because I think the thought that was going on in my head was that my parents can't relate, my parents don't understand, my parents can't see what it is that I'm seeing, and that can be on a whole number of topics. It's not just upbringing. I think culturally there is a different mindset towards work. There is a different mindset towards the parental child relationship. There is a different mindset towards how things are done, generally speaking. And so as you're growing up in a country, like I said, that's different to the one that your parents have grown up in, I think you find that you question a lot. You have to ask a lot of questions because it doesn't tie in with what you're seeing. And I think a lot, as I've grown up, I'd say, and kind of matured, I would say that something that I never really took into consideration back then was that I didn't actually see what was going on in other people's households. And so what I saw on the outside was what they wanted to show me.
Which is fundamentally quite different from the way we grew up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I could be coming to my parents with questions and disagreeing with the way that they're doing things based on almost a projection that that person wants to show, which could be a completely different situation or matter back at home. They could be having the exact same conversations that I'm having back at home, but what they have wanted to present has been sort of a different lifestyle. And so I think for me that was one of the big difficulties growing up. I also would say that, and I know we're not talking about tech today, but as tech has evolved, the exposure that you have to so many cultures, I think also adds to you questioning the culture that you've been brought up in, or the culture that you've been exposed to growing up. You can see everything. If I they call it X now, but Twitter for all of us that were on it before, you can literally see the thoughts of people all over the world. You jump on Instagram, you can see the lives, or at least what people are portraying of their lives, as easy as 1, 2, 3. I can see what's going on in India. I can see what's going on in, America. I can see what's going on in Dubai. There's a lot. And I think for me, when I come back to the sort of original question or the topic, I would say that is something that plays a massive part in the culture that your child would grow up in. And so I think if I was to suggest anything, if I was to think back to what could have been done differently to kind of navigate that, I would definitely say conversation, communication. I think, unfortunately, with the way the world is, you can't really impose a culture anymore, because you don't have as much control as to what your child will see of the world. The world is so open now that you have to be ready to at least have those conversations, whether or not you permit your child to live their lives a certain way or adhere to a certain culture is another conversation entirely. But there has to be that conversation, because it just becomes a dictatorship. And it, as the scripture my dad used at the beginning, that path that you're trying to keep your child on, because they are being forced to stay on that path and not taught to stay on that path, you then end up in a position where at the first opportunity where they can deviate from that path,
They flee.
they will sprint. I think a good example, my daughter, in our house,
That just had a good ring to it. My daughter.
yeah, my daughter, she's very funny. What you will notice is, if you, like, for example, in our home, she kind of roams about in a playpen, but the moment, and when she's in that playpen, she's very reserved. She'll play with her toys, will stay within the confinements of that playpen. But the moment you take her out and expose her to space, because she's always seeing everyone else taking advantage of that space, she sprints. Even before she could properly walk, she was running whenever you give her space. And I think that's a good sort of analogy to kind of show if you just control or dictate what someone can do, then when given the opportunity, they are going to want to explore. They're going to want to take advantage. And so I would say that communication and conversation, especially conversation, just being able to sit down and have frank conversations with your children is massively important.
Okay, so you've definitely touched on a lot there. I know that many, at least when doing the research for this, I found that there was this suggestion that some parents are out of touch with popular culture. Pop culture or popular culture is more associated with the younger generation, and I joked during the video I released a week ago about this whole subject matter, that we are not as out of touch as the young ones may feel. And I kind of gave the impression that I'm tech savvy, or at least I knew how to do one thing that will make life on the internet more productive. And I know that before we started this broadcast or podcast, you made it very clear, and I've also made it clear that somehow I may not be, as a person, out of touch because I make, a deliberate attempt to relate or to engage the young folk. So I'm in your space. And somehow if there was any suggestion of being out of touch, it would be hard to place that or pin that on me, because I can act as a child or behave as a child and come down to your level. It may also be because of my pastoral upbringing or tutoring, that you've always got to come down a level so that you meet people where they are. And so that's helped. But would you say that's the same for, and I know we can't generalize, but is that your feeling? Is that what you feel other parents are doing? Because you mentioned communication and engagement. What are we missing if you're agreeing that we are out of touch with culture?
I think one thing specifically that I can see as being a bit of an issue is the content that your child consumes. I would say that parents probably, even the best of them, probably will only see 30%. And I think 70% is a huge amount not to be seeing of what your child consumes, culturally speaking. For a good example, I'll go back to Twitter. Growing up, my parents didn't have Twitter, so I would be on Twitter. I could be, consuming all this content, taking in all these different cultures, but my parents would not be aware of what was coming in. And so that would then mean that you're only getting a very small percentage of what I'm seeing. Maybe you're on Facebook with me and you see sort of the people that I'm friends with and things like that. But the actual content that I digest is going to be very different. So for example, using the Twitter example again, Twitter, I'm probably on it the most out of all the social media apps. And the other week, Elon Musk temporarily imposed sort of a limit on the tweets that you can see in a day, which then actually made me realize how many tweets I was seeing a day, because I got the message saying, take a break, come back later, and then you'll be able to see the tweets that are coming out. And so it subconsciously, I would say on a day-to-day basis, I probably don't read them all, but I would say 1,000 tweets can flash in front of my face in a day. And for your parents to maybe know one or two of those tweets out of, the 1,000, it just gives a skewed version of what you're actually taking in.
Well, I have a related question, and
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. So, the fact that you were exposed to that amount of information, through your preferred social media platform,
Yeah.
how does that relate, or how does that? Because we're still talking about parenting, so parents are out of touch.
Yeah.
So out of touch with culture.
So we were talking about popular culture.
Yeah.
And so let's say people have certain opinions about popular culture. They go on Twitter, they'll type their tweet, and it goes out.
Yeah.
So imagine how many opinions in those thousands of tweets that I'm seeing, that I'm taking in. It could be on anything. So politically, I see a lot of opinions about political figures. It can be about the music scene. I can see lots of opinions about the music scene. I can see the content coming from the music scene. I can see what's going on, even socially speaking.
Yeah.
If two friends are having an argument and I see it on Twitter, and I see how they're engaging with each other culturally, that is forming my own cultural imprint. So I'm seeing, so this person can talk to this person that way, so why can't I talk to these people this way? And those, although I don't think I've ever out loud said that's a thought that I'm having, it definitely plays.
It will influence, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely plays. So if for example, this isn't the case for me because I don't have this in my circle, but if I had people who were maybe quite aggressive in the way they talk, and that's all I was seeing in the way that they're tweeting or the social media that they're putting out, then it's very likely that I will then come to see that aggressive way of speaking as the norm. And so as a parent then who comes and tells me, you're talking a bit too sharp, you're talking a bit too hot, relax, it will be hard for me to
adjust
because that's not what's normal to me.
Okay. Yeah, that's insightful.
Yeah. So I would say, and that's just speaking of Twitter. Nowadays you have TikTok, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have
Trends.
everything. Is that what they?
I think the new
There was
one.
a new one, yeah.
The Facebook
Threads.
Meta. Yeah, but it says
Yeah.
trends, yeah.
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 All of that. It just it's in your face, and nowadays I'm going to say 8 years old, but I can imagine that there are children even before that have phones, that have social media.
Without a doubt.
And so because you're not sitting there with your child, because I don't know of any parent, and I'm sure there might be parents out there that do it, but I don't know of any parent that will sit there and actually look consistently at everything that their child is consuming on their mobile phone.
It's not practical.
Yeah. And so because of that, and I'm not saying that that's wrong to not be able to do that, because it is impractical, but because you're not there 24/7, you then have to, and I come back to the communication part, you then have to be able to have those conversations with your child. It would make a world of difference, even if you cannot say to your child, do this, and they still go and do something else. At least hearing the conversation, you can understand where certain things are coming from. I think if you don't have that, then everything is going to blindside you. Everything will blindside you, because genuinely speaking, the world is very scary. If you just spend you just spend a lot of time and actually really just take time to deep it. It is there is a lot going on. So that would be
No, and then I think, and thank you, because one of the awkward things with doing this with family is that there's a tendency of introducing some bias, and you don't say what you want to say. And deep down, I remember when we started, I told you that we are going to be organic, and just allow things flow so that we can have a genuine discussion. I know it's awkward looking at the screens rather than looking at each other. But we'll get used to it. But I think the insightful thing that I've taken, and many would think that I was up for a fight. That's why I, said I want to debate someone. Absolutely not. And I think at the beginning I said in that video, and I'm saying it again now, that I want the members of this community and anybody passing by, for that matter, to get information, because if what you said, which I acknowledge was insightful, that if all you're being exposed to is the information you're getting from social media, there is no way that will not come to the fore in your own engagement in the popular culture we talk about. Mm-hmm. And so I may come at something as a parent based on old trends and behaviors, and yet you're getting a social media vibe about a certain way, mm-hmm. and you are, that's showing up in your day-to-day discussions. It's going to be different, immensely different from my expectation as a parent, mm-hmm. or lack of. So I get that we can be out of touch if and I think I also acknowledge this, that there is a lot of truth in those in what you've just mentioned about the influence social media has on behaviors and all that. But the reason why I also, and I think I mentioned in the video, that it is not uniformly so.
Yeah.
There's some principles about parenting that social media cannot knock.
Yeah, definitely.
No secondary information, and we've already established the biblical principle, mm-hmm. where there's some ways that you will lead as a parent that social media cannot in any way or form attack. Mm-hmm. That something as important as submission, submission in the context of the family, where dad submits to God and you watch him submit to God. Mom submits to dad as dad. She watches dad submit to God. The children obeying the parents, and you see parents not bossing it or lording it over their children. Mm-hmm. Equally, parents are not provoking the children. So if we work in that dynamic of Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, mm-hmm. Chapter 5 and chapter 6, the whole thing, if you look at that dynamic, social media cannot bring anything new to that basic principle.
Yeah.
So those are foundational. And so when I was making noise about, we're not as out of touch as you may make, or, you may be suggesting, I was leaning on those basic principles that can't be shifted. God's word cannot be shifted by suggestion.
But if I was to just give an example, And this will kind of move it away from the social media element that I was speaking about.
Yeah.
But if you think back to like when you think back to the story of, and this is going to sound like I'm going left, but bear with me.
I'll bear with you.
If you think back to the story of David and Bathsheba, right? David was described as a man after God's own heart, right? And as an adult now, or as someone who has matured in my relationship with God, to be described as someone who is after God's own heart is a big compliment. A big compliment to pay to David. And that means that David's thoughts, David's actions, David's way of living was all geared towards God.
Yeah.
However, David was exposed, and it's what his eyes took in. He saw Bathsheba dancing, or I don't know, bathing on a rooftop, and I'm sure the children who are watching this can remember the story. And that was all it took from him to go from being someone after God's own heart, God's love, to switch from that path and deviate. It doesn't take a lot. And so, as much as the foundation was there, the story of David and Goliath happened years and years before David and Bathsheba. When you look at the story of David and Goliath, David was strong in his faith. That faith was what really took down that giant of a man.
Yeah.
And for someone to be so embedded in all things relating or pertaining to our Father, it was still possible for him to deviate from that path. And it's what he's consumed. If you're exposed to certain things at a certain time, and this is what the devil does. He's waiting there like a thief, ready just to take an opportunity, and you can be deviated. So it could be a song that you hear, it could be a music video that you watch. You see a certain lifestyle or culture being promoted, and if that catches you at the right time, no matter how strong that foundation is, and this is why you really have to have a personal relationship with God, no matter how strong you may believe you are, the devil is there waiting to take advantage. And so, again, coming back to what I was saying about communication and being able to have those frank conversations with your child, or at least letting them feel like they can say whatever it is they are thinking to you is massively important. Because the moment there's a moment where you're looking left and right and you have to make a decision. If at that point where you can go left or right, your child first and foremost is going to God, we're in a good place. But if they're not strong enough in their relationship yet to do that, then as parents, the path that they're directed on is going to be coming from you. And so you have to be able to be there at those crossroads. But the only way you're going to be at those crossroads is if that child feels comfortable enough to have those conversations with you. I'm at this point in life, and I really don't know what the right way is, because culturally I'm seeing this, but you brought us up this way. Why did you bring us up this way? Why is it that I should go down the path that you're telling me? If you're driving a car and you come to a left or a right turning, there is always a reason why you will go left. There is always a reason why you will go right. But it's about understanding that reason. Waze will tell me that it's deviating me because there's extra traffic on the route. It's giving me a reason. And so I can still choose to go down the route that it's telling me not to. If I choose to go down that route, I'm sure I'm doing it for my own reason. But it's giving me the reason as to why I should continue down a different path. And I think that cultivating that that relationship with your child allows you to be present when they are at those crossroads. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I would say.
No, and I think you said that pretty well. I got a bit distracted because when you were doing your
Sorry.
no, it's not your fault. Not your fault. It's tech that is doing it. So I needed to make sure we still had you adjusted. But I agree. As we look to kind of bring this, and we said we're going to just stick to culture, but we've moved a bit into tech, but it's okay. Anybody else who has a different perspective, feel free, obviously, to do what you need to do. But ultimately, I think certainly my takeaway from the subject itself, and particularly what you've shared on culture, popular culture for that matter, is that as parents, we need to have an awareness of sorts. So we've got to be aware of popular culture. It is what it is. It's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And so we do ourselves a disservice, especially if we're still parenting. We do ourselves a disservice if we don't engage and find out, the stuff that's happening on those arenas. Because ultimately we want to be the best parent, the best dad, the best mom. And so the more information we have, the better. But I still come back to those red lines. The principles that I mentioned, there are a lot, and believe me, the Bible has a lot of those principles laid out. Those are red lines for a reason, because we serve a never-changing God. He's always the same, and so would his principles hold us in good stead concerning parents, for the unforeseeable future. And I'm certain in my spirit that there's nothing that will shake that. And so for those parents, in a way, I'm saying engage, get aware. But I'm also saying for the parents who are not quite there yet, and they're sticking to what they know, what God has informed them to do with their children, you're not doing wrong. I believe that we're on a journey, and as we continue this sanctification journey, we'll get some information that will help inform us better on how we can manage our young ones. Some of us, it may not be that we're directly or we have direct oversight over our children. It could be that we are engaging with, nephews, nieces, godchildren. Could be, such someone you're mentoring. Ultimately, the foundation for me that is really no starter, just leave it alone, is that God informs all that we do. But if we're discerning enough, there's some times that he will lead us to get information here, get information there, match it or, merge it with what we already have as foundation, and meet our children where they are. And that's my takeaway, certainly from what you've presented. What would be your, and feel comfortable advising parents? This is the whole idea, that parents on this platform and those visiting should be humble enough to receive counsel from the young folk, because that's what we're called to do. Submission is universal in the family context. So I'll be keen to know what you have to say about, or what you want to tell parents.
I 100% stand alongside you in that there is a blueprint. The Bible lays down the foundation of how to raise your children, and that should be followed and not deviated from. However, not however.
Okay.
Furthermore, furthermore,
That's interesting. That just makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
furthermore, I think as parents, in the same way that your relationship with God develops from milk to bread, I think you have to be willing to understand that as a child, they may not understand the reasons behind it. And to explain, to have those conversations, to want to have those conversations is what will take your child from the milk side, where they're completely reliant on you, to being able to take bread. I think parents have to be careful that it doesn't become dictatorish, because if it becomes dictatorish, you then kind of fall into the path of provoking your child.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to say, oh, it's your fault that your child has gone down that route, but in not meeting them at the level that they are at, you may be provoking them to then really rebel. And I think,
And we don't want that.
yeah, we don't. No. And so it's important. You know, growing up, we used to have these wristbands that all the kids at church used to wear. WWJD. What would Jesus do? And I think as I've matured, I've kind of looked into that even deeper, right? And you look at the example that Jesus left for you, not just thinking, oh, well, I have an opportunity to tell the truth or tell a lie. What would Jesus do? Oh, okay, I'm going to tell the truth. Jesus left us examples of how to behave.
Yeah.
When Jesus was here with us on earth in flesh, it was, his life is documented through the gospel, right? And I think one thing that we should take from his example is that he was teaching. He didn't come and say, this is it, do this, do that. He sat down, taught, spoke in parables. He came to a level where we would be able to understand and learn, so that the what he was teaching would stick. If there's a parable, this is not a biblical parable, but there's a parable of if you teach if you give a man fish, he will eat and be full. But I don't know how exactly it goes. But
they call them proverbs or idiom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you teach the man to fish, then he can feed his family.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that really highlights, like, for me at least, the importance of teaching. It has to be that teacher relationship, because that's the example Jesus gave to us. When you're speaking to, when he was speaking to unbelievers, when he was speaking to Gentiles, when he was going around and giving his sermons and all of that, they were lessons. They weren't instruction. He does give instruction at point, and in the same way, you follow that example, there are going to be times where instruction is required. But the majority of the Gospels, the big thing that sticks out is how much he teaches. Everything is a way to teach. And so as parents, we have to pull away from just being instructors and almost revel in our role as teachers. If you think back to your experiences at school, or I think back to my experiences at school, after every point the teacher is giving us, do you have any questions, class? Is there anything that you don't understand? Is there, and even just that, you realize how much that played a part. I had a Spanish teacher, bless her, that I really just did not like Spanish, and I really questioned and questioned and questioned. But her being, for me to get the grades that I did in Spanish, she had to teach me. It wasn't that she was just instructing me, because as soon as I go into the exam, I won't know. It almost becomes just a repeat after me exercise. The moment where you actually need to utilize that knowledge, because you don't understand it, because it hasn't been taught to you, it's very hard to use it. And so, as we highlighted in the beginning, the foundation, the blueprint is there in the Bible as to how we should live our lives, how you should raise your children. With that blueprint, you then combine it with the example that Jesus left for us, that I will teach you. Ask questions. Let me understand what's going on in your head. You see, the Pharisees were always asking questions to kind of catch Jesus out. But really, those questions were always turned around into opportunities to learn. You know, he'll say, I can't remember what exactly the question was that led to the answer that you should be like children, because they are the ones, children are the ones that will, well, how do I phrase this? I really need to.
Well, Jesus definitely gave, the picture he gave was when he was painting a picture of how the kingdom is.
Come unto me as children.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that when your children are coming to you and asking questions, or feel comfortable enough to ask you those questions, it's almost like those Pharisees. They're coming to you with questions. Maybe I'm going to catch my mouth on this. Maybe this isn't the way. But that's your opportunity there. That's your opportunity to say, well, this is the way to go. This is why we're going to go this way.
I love the fact that you said that we should not be instructors, we should be teachers. And I think that teaching element there is quite powerful, because it's a two-way street. You use the word dictate, being a dictator.
Yeah,
we should flee from dictating, and engaging will be a better option. And I think teaching, or having a teacher's mindset, gives us that engagement opportunity.
I'm in a good place to kind of give a perspective on this, because I believe at some point all parents have had that teaching spirit. My daughter is 1 year old, 18 months, and you can instruct her. You can tell her, no, don't do that, and she won't do it. But if we teach her, we trying to explain, don't do this because you'll hurt yourself, don't do this. And although she may not be catching it, you can see that her response is very different from the shout, no. And she's learning. So you say no a couple of times, and all parents would have gone through this. As you raise your child, there comes a point where you actually have to teach them. They're not aware of the world enough that you can just say, don't do this, don't do that, because they'll be curious, they'll be inquisitive, they want to go and find out for themselves. What I think teaching does is it prevents them from going to find out for themselves and then dealing with the consequences. I can say to Bella, don't touch the fire. right? Don't touch the fire. Don't touch the fire. If she touches the fire and finds out that it's hot and it burns her, the damage has already been done. If I'm able to educate her, look, daddy loves you, so don't do it because daddy is trying to protect you. Don't do this, don't do that. Maybe not at this age, but as she gets older and starts to understand, language a bit more, she's going to behave very differently in those situations. Yeah, that's.
I agree, and I think we were certainly on the same page, and it just dawned on me that I was asking a parent to give advice to a parent. At first, no, it's beautiful that we can do that now, and our granddaughter is growing older, and so I can see how the advice you're giving to parents will obviously help her. So that's a beautiful, beautiful picture. And thank you for that breakdown. We definitely need to embrace a lot of what Ed has just shared there, certainly on the teaching front. Yes, we have red lines that can't be crossed, but we really do need to allow our children. I've always said that we've got to be in a place where we shouldn't be ashamed to be vulnerable before our own children, because they are children, and it's from a place of love. So we're giving them something that is lifelong. So there's nothing we'll do in that sense that will hurt them. And so, yes, we started on the premise of parents are out of touch or they're not. And it's grown into a discussion where we're looking at the demerits of an out of touch parent, or things that we shouldn't be doing as parents and things we should start introducing. We've also mentioned that you shouldn't feel condemned if you've not really been out there and allowed the world come into your parenting style and all that. This is not to condemn anyone.
Just to add, right? You just kind of reminded me of where we started, and I think it's important to say that the problem isn't whether you as a parent are out of touch. That in itself isn't a problem. In fact, to be honest, from the stuff that you see out there and culturally speaking, it's almost better that you're out of touch. Be out of touch with every culture apart from the Bible. But the importance is then that, okay, your child is also being exposed to that same content that you may not be seeing. You now need to be prepared for what comes with that. I think nowadays it's probably impractical for a parent to be really in touch with the culture that's going on, because it genuinely moves so fast that really it's only kids that have the time to keep up with it, because they're constantly being the industries that we're speaking about, they're geared towards children. Social media geared towards children, the music industry geared towards the children. They're not making, they're not making the music for the adults to consume. It's for the young people. Everything you see is geared towards young people. So it's not weird for a parent to be out of touch, but it's what an out of touch parent does. Mm-hmm. That then makes that difference.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's been fun, and I don't know that we've touched everything we desired to do today, but I think it's clear that there is a lot that we can still learn, and there's no, as far as I know, you don't close the door on information or learning. And so there's obviously other bits of information that we need to take on, embrace, and run with. But whether we're out of touch as old folk or as parents, that's not the issue. The issue is that there's room to improve. Parenting is something that is so important to this channel. I call it shading our children on their journey. I know that we focus on tech on this platform, but in the context of this question, their life journey needs us. Whether we are hands-on parents or remote parents, we just need to parent. And the more that we, invest, the time that we invest in this will definitely help our children in the long run. Okay? So we've touched on culture and we've sort of dabbled elsewhere. But my invitation to debate millennials is still open. You don't have to be a parent like Ed is. You don't have to be, you just need to be ready to offer a perspective. And I'm insisting, because I can, that you're a millennial, you're someone younger, someone who is a child, who has been parented, if you can use that English word. But ultimately, I want us to be able to learn from each other, parents and the young folk, old folk, and children alike. So it's important that you take me on this offer. Don't be... my experience with invitations like this is people are just too into themselves and they don't want to share. And they have a lot... Some of you will be watching this and have a lot to say, at the camera. But I'm inviting you to do it on me, or do it with me, one-on-one. Okay? So we've had Ed, who has so gracefully accepted the invite, and he's basically, the ball is now rolling. Millennials, this is your turn. You now need to. So Ed, thank you very much for coming and spending time with Dad.
No worries.
Yeah, and thank you for your perspective. Thank you for everything that you've contributed to this initiative. And I know that we, as not just a family, but as individuals, we're all going to benefit from where this takes us, okay? All right, folks. So it's been nice having you. It's make sure you share this information with your friends and family. And you don't know, you share it with a family friend and they may want to take me on. Okay? So until next week or whenever, because these days I actually do release 2 videos at times, but whenever it is we meet again, I pray that you have a fantastic end to the weekend and enjoy the bank holiday, which I have to remind myself. Okay? God bless and goodbye.